Good late evening, Facebook viewers. My name is Tom Lowy. I'm a reporter and columnist from the Galesburg Register Mail. We're doing an extremely rare late edition of Happening Now. We're joined by Elijah French. Hello, Elijah.
Hi, Tom. How you doing?
I'm just fine. Elijah, you have written a letter to the city council. You are, let's start at the, let me backtrack here. You're a former city treasurer, and you've written a letter to the city council and to a number of media outlets, and you've posted on Facebook your letter just a couple hours ago. Let's tell viewers, basically, in your own words, what's that letter about?
So what it's about is I resigned from the treasurer position in August of 2017. And the city of Galesburg has ordinances in regards to the position of treasurer. There's also state statutes that deal with certain actions that the treasurer's office has to do.
That they're responsible for.
Right. Yes. And basically, in the past year and 7 months, which is how long that vacancy's been now, there has not been an appointment to the treasurer's office. And there has not been movement on that issue. And by doing that, we're essentially violating, as a city, violating the ordinances that are there for the city, along with the state statutes that are echoed within those ordinances.
We spoke in the car ride over here to this interview, and I said that you've dropped a bombshell on a Thursday evening, and I didn't mean that in an exploitive way. I think there are some very important aspects to this letter, a number of layers. So let's kind of peel those back a little bit. The first layer being is that, if I'm not mistaken, you ran for treasurer with the open campaign of saying that you didn't think there really needed to be a treasurer's office, that there were responsibilities that could be handled by administrative people in the city. Tell us how you feel now, because you make that very clear in your letter.
So yeah, that was my platform. It is similar to the event of running and whatnot. You know, there are cities that don't have a treasurer,
right,
that have a very similar form of government as we do. Some of those have been passed off in those forms of government, and so yes, that was my position. I think idealistically, and I'll say it that way,
right,
I would still prefer that.
Sure,
right,
fair enough.
But unfortunately, pragmatically, which I think is more important than idealistically, pragmatically, we've now, this incident, or this year and 7 months lapse in judgment, kind of shows that we're all human and we're all fallible. And to me, that we need to, especially when you're talking about taxpayer money,
right,
money people are not necessarily choosing to give to the city.
Right. Sure.
They are being forcibly taken from them, to the point that if you don't pay your property taxes, you lose your home.
Right.
So I think it's very important that we need to safeguard against that, against any type of financial issue that could be there. And I think for us as a city, I think it's now been demonstrated that we need a treasurer's position, in fact, a full-time treasurer.
And there are specific elements of your letter that kind of go to that point, that are kind of like the brick and mortar of your point, maybe, or the foundation of your point. So let's talk in specifics about what you allege in your letter to the council members that is not being done, and or if it is being done, it's being done incorrectly.
Okay.
Let's talk about that.
So, I mean, if you look at the ordinances, because the ordinances mirror some of the state statutes that I bring up, specifically the state statutes dealing with an annual treasurer's report, the state statute dealing with the reports for the 2 pension funds, because the city treasurer acts as treasurer for those funds. And there's a state law that basically says that you have to provide a report to the council every year on those funds. To my knowledge, that was not done in 2018. But more importantly, you know, in day-to-day operations, according to the statute of the ordinances that are in place that are currently there, the treasurer has to oversee the depositing of money. That's their most essential role. They have to maintain receipts. There has to be a deposit of money. They have to do the monthly balance in with the finance department. None of that's being done. That's all not being done.
Wow. So there's let's I think a lot of people view it as bureaucracy, and rightfully so, because it is a bureaucracy. But what you're essentially saying, if I'm not mistaken, is that a layer of accountability has been removed from the city. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And so you've come to the position to, and this is kind of reiterating things, but you've come to the position to see the importance, as of right now, the way that our city government is constructed, that treasurer role is still pretty important. Is that a correct way to characterize it?
I would say it's important, and honestly, I would look for its expansion.
What do you mean by that?
Well, during the campaign, I talked about the treasurer's position being a glorified money courier. That's actually how I phrase it in the letter. I still think that's the case. The treasurer should be over all money being taken in. Right now, they're not. They do the deposit.
Right.
But they really should, because you want a traditional accounting system is the people accounting or handling the books don't touch the money.
Okay.
And so right now, the people handling the books are touching the money. They're depositing and they're receiving the money. So idealistically, if you had both, like we currently have, you want the treasurer's office be charged of that front counter there in City Hall that's receiving that money and whatnot. All the money received should be the treasurer's office. The accounting should be done by the finance department. But ultimately, I really would like to see the treasurer, as far as, structurally, over the finance department even, to kind of separate from specifically the city manager.
So let's walk this back a little bit further and talk about some of the other allegations in your letter that I think people will find troubling, and that is that you allege that you've communicated openly with the mayor. And let's be clear about this: that you're not somebody with an axe to grind against John Pritchard. Quite the opposite. I think you said you've campaigned for him twice. Mm-hmm. So you've had made, I think, at least a number of attempts, maybe 2 attempts.
At least 2. To
communicate with him your concerns. Mm-hmm. And tell the viewers what he told you about what what city administration would like to happen to the treasurer's office.
Right. So talking I was at a political event with the mayor in 2018. So this is a good number of months. We're now probably 6 months or more out from when I left office. And we had very extensive conversations in late July into August about a replacement. In fact, I gave him a name of someone to replace me. But he wanted to look at that and look at other people, which is his prerogative. He's allowed to appoint. But in 2018, I was at this event with him, and I point blank asked him, where are we at with appointing someone? And his response to me was basically that the city, he used they, and in the discussion was city administration, was the they. But city administration really just wanted the position to fade away. Well, that's not how you deal with a position, right?
Right.
That's not the legal way you deal with the position, because there's ordinances there, there's laws there that dictate how things have to be done. The only way to really, if you wanted to get rid of it, would be to not only get rid of it, but you have to alter the bylaws in some way or shape or form in order to do that. That has not been done at all.
Interesting. The other interesting thing I want to walk you back to about the mayor is that, and this isn't illegal, but in point of fact, the mayor was the person who approached you to originally run for the office. Is that a correct characterization?
Yeah, it was him that approached me, and I detail that in the letter. And I put that in specifically to what you said, specifically so that people were aware that, one, yes, the mayor is political.
Right.
And number two, more importantly, to show that this isn't I'm not someone linked with Walt McAllister who's now trying to grind an axe because Walt lost the campaign race or something. I'm someone who has supported the mayor twice in re-election bids. I've walked doors for him. I was always an advocate for him, even talking with other council members. And yeah, he was the one that approached me for this position.
And he's helped you. I mean, been a kind of support system for you in terms of
Yep.
of what you were intending on doing. Let's talk a little bit about how you view the role of city manager, because you bring up Todd Thompson specifically in your letter. Why is that?
I bring up Todd because while it's not his position to appoint, it's not his job to do that appointing, it is his job to manage day-to-day operations. And when you have a role like the treasurer that is supposed to be doing daily deposits, that's supposed to be maintaining the receipts and delivering copies of those receipts, that is supposed to be doing daily action or monthly actions in regards to what's happening, in addition to the yearly things like the treasurer's report and whatnot, it would fall on the person managing day-to-day operations to take that seriously, because that's a layer of accountability, a layer of financial stability that has to be there by ordinance and ethically. And, Todd is, to my knowledge, has not been obviously pressing the mayor. If I was city manager, I would be on him every moment of every day and not letting go. I would imagine if the city people that I dealt with were to characterize me, they would characterize me as a little bit of a bulldog. When I want to do something or I want to get something done, I kind of stay on it. And that's why I can say we've had numerous conversations about this, because I would go into his office and have the conversation about it.
I understand.
And so the fact that in a year and 7 months, nothing's happened.
A long time.
I mean, that's a lot of days.
Right. And I think one of the interesting things you point out is this notion of, well, just let it wither on the vine. And that's a disservice, whether you think there should be a treasurer's office or not.
Right.
And I think this is an important point that you make. No matter which side of the fence you're on in terms of the model, it's not fair to anyone as far as taxpayers are concerned. And it's not fair really to your form of government to have this kind of wither on the vine attitude. Is that a correct summation of kind of how you feel?
Yeah, I would say I would agree with that. For me, I think ultimately it's about, regardless of your ideologies or what model you think the city government should, whatever, particulars, I think we all would want to make sure that the laws and the statutes that are there are being followed, right? So for me, the important part is, this is set out in our ordinances. This is set out in law, with state law. This is something we should be doing. And, you can't propagate fairness or justice or any of that if you're not following the law.
Right.
Right?
You got to start from a basis.
And that is, we're a society of laws, right? And so we hope those laws are applied equally, fairly, justly. And when city government chooses not to abide by the law, by their own ordinances, I mean, that leaves us in a very precarious place.
I think there's been enunciated, maybe not, explicitly, but I think there's been enunciated, and I want to know if you're kind of part of this. Not that you guys are organized or something, but there's been enunciated a kind of concern about the idea of moving away from elected officials to kind of leaving things in the hands of administration. Now, I think you're very clear about the fact that administration is important in a city this size. But talk to me about that.
So for me, I'm fine with, I think there is a place, obviously, for professionals, right? A professional city. You want it ran by people that know the domain.
Right.
That they're dealing with. Excuse me. You want that to happen, right? But in the same point, there has to be a check and a balance on that. And as far as I can see currently, there's not really a check. Okay, you take the David Jones situation. That wouldn't have came out if it wasn't for David Salter.
Right.
Writing a letter to the city council, which is kind of motivated me to write a letter to the city council.
Right.
It wouldn't have been taken seriously. It would have been, unfortunately, one more thing, as I told you in the car, one more thing we would have just kind of brushed under a rug and kind of ignored. So I have an issue with there being a lack of accountability and a lack of oversight. Part of the job I think of the mayor is specifically to he's the one closest, serves as kind of an in-between between the council and the city manager.
Right.
To rein that type of stuff in. There's more to being the mayor than just, getting jobs, which is great. Yes, bring in jobs.
Right.
But you also have to overwatch and kind of look at what is happening with your city. Now, it's one thing to meddle, right? Because we've had mayors that do that.
Sure.
It's one thing to meddle and get in there where you are involved in day-to-day operations and whatnot. But if you begin to see a culture of not wanting to address issues, you begin to see a culture of, not following the law. I mean, I think it's time to step in, and then invite an extension of that as the council begins to hear stories about what's going on in the city administration, things like Lisa Wilson, things like this. I would hope the council would act.
And a lot of people, I think the last thing we're going to talk about here is that I think your motivations, you make them clear. But let's recap again for people, because I think one of the things that's always leveled at people, that's always questioned about people, is like, what's his motivation? Who is he carrying water for? So I throw that out to you, just in all openness. Let's talk about that. Like
sure. So I obviously worked with John Pritchard in his mayoral runs. I also worked with Angela Bastian. I was her campaign manager the first time. I'm giving her some advice this time. But none of that. I've been contemplating this since December, Tom. Okay. And really, I started going out to other people saying, this is what's going on. It needs to be addressed. Because I'm, the last treasurer, I feel somewhat responsible for dealing with this.
Right.
In the letter, I'm very clear. I've given them enough time. A year and 7 months is enough time to do the right thing. Not only that, yes, am I bringing it up in a convenient time? Yes. There's an election on. I know people are paying attention.
Right.
I know people are looking at city government. I know the Lisa Wilson thing, which should be brought up and has been brought up, needs to be brought up, and I'm adding to that to say, hey, there's other issues here other than just Lisa Wilson.
Yeah.
That need to be addressed. So there is a convenient timing to it because I want the message to be heard.
Right.
If I know that it's time for the message to get out and to go, especially after I personally tried to talk to the mayor, I've tried talking to the city manager, I've tried, direct and indirect routes of getting that message through to nothing. It's time to be a little bit more direct.
All right. Thank you for your candor. Thank you for your openness in talking about, who you're connected to in some ways. To sum up for Facebook viewers, is it okay to direct people to your Facebook page? Can they view it on there?
They will be able to view the post. My actual page is private.
Right. Okay.
But the post itself is public.
Okay. So if they go to your page, they're going to see
They're going to see it.
So you can see how Elisha French spells his name. And if you go to his Facebook page, it's made public, his letter. I think it's really worth reading and kind of letting people know about your perspective of the city. And that perspective is, folks, that he is the former treasurer, and some of his opinions about the treasurer's office have changed, and he tells you the basis of that change with some specific examples. And here with the Register Mail Facebook Live, he's talked about, his motivations for doing what he's done and what he hopes to accomplish. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem, Tom.
Seriously, I kind of came at you out of left field, and you graciously responded, and I do appreciate that, and I think our viewers do too.
Yeah, no problem.
Where do you go from here?
Well, honestly, from here is, what is the city council going to do? They now have information in front of them. They can't manage day-to-day operations. That's the job of the city manager. But I think it's time to ask some questions, start to burrow in. At minimum, they need to appoint a treasurer. And a treasurer that's going to fulfill the duties as situated in the ordinances.
Yeah. Let me throw you a question from even further out of left field. We met a while back, and I don't know exactly what your politics are and everything, but I've always found you to be a thoughtful, engaging person, and still do now. Are you done with government, or is there a chance that you find another role in public service?
I'm not actively seeking. The times that I've ran has only been because someone asked me to. So
okay.
I'm not ambitious or looking to run for anything.
Okay. I was just curious because you are engaged and obviously very knowledgeable about the city in which you live. So I was just curious. Yeah. I hope you don't mind me asking.
No plans. That's all right. Okay. It's an obvious question.
Well, yeah. I mean, and in some way, and you know, somebody out there's going, what's he running for?
Right. He's running for nothing. That's what he's running for.
Well, once again, folks, I hope you've taken the time, and this will be archived on the Register Mail Facebook page, and you're certainly welcome to share it. It's a product of Facebook, not of the Register Mail. It's free to you. Please share and show people around. We've been joined by Elijah French, and he's the former treasurer, and he told us all about a letter that he's written to the council, and I think it's a very important letter. Once again, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, no problem, Tom.
All right, folks, thank you for listening and watching, and look for Elijah's letter. I'm going to do a follow-up story that'll run online tomorrow and probably run in the paper on Friday. So, and your letter is also going to be published, I think, as a letter to the editor, okay. by our managing editor.
Well, that's good. I come from a journalist background. I have my minor in journalism.
That's what I thought. I didn't know whether to bring it up.
So I thought about sending it as a letter to the editor, and I'm like, man, this thing's over 1,000 words. I'm not going to do that to them.
Well, I think
so I appreciate that.
They're going to find some way to do that. You're a Monmouth College guy.
Yeah.
That's when I met you. Were you still in Monmouth or just recently graduated? Or?
I graduated in 14.
In 14. Okay. All right. Well, once again, thanks for joining me. I do appreciate you taking the time. Viewers, likewise, I appreciate your time. Have a great evening, and I'm sure that we will talk tomorrow at some point. Thank you.